Hi, it's Jessi. Today I'm drinking some hibiscus tea from Traditional Medicinals. I think I stole this from like a restaurant or a hotel or something. And that's way too hot. I'm working from home today, which is fantastic. Especially fantastic because I misread an email last week and completed everything for last Monday. So I have nothing to do and I'm home alone, which means if I yell about people being wrong on the internet, it's not disrupting my partner's law school studying. So I'm gonna react to some negative reviews to some of my favorite books. This shelf, in theory, is my favorite bookshelf. In practice, I gotta figure things out. That said, so these will be some books I will be pulling from for this. I'm also going to be reading Goodreads. Storygraph, forgive me. I love using Storygraph, link to my Storygraph below. But the one thing it's not made for, not intended to be used for, and therefore not good at doing is judging books by a single number that rates everything you feel about the book. I'm going to go ahead and slide that back. Oh, now it's on the, now you can see the counter. Okay, so we're going to start with something I think is generally a popular book. Gideon the Ninth, not Hera the Ninth. I like Tara the Ninth more, but I feel like we'll get into spoilers territory looking at second books or books later in the series. So let's look at Gideon the Ninth. It's a 4.22 overall, which is fantastic. Nah, I don't want to look at DNFs. DNF. This is a lesbian necromancers in space fantasy sci-fi novel. Published in 2019 and with a lot of hype, so has a chance to get nominated for this year's awards. Read it as part of a monthly reading in February, yeah, whatever. Out of 3 words of the aforementioned blurb, only necromancers has a notable presence. While the protagonist, Gideon Nav, is a lesbian, it is more on the back burner, like her mentioning that some gals are hot as well as guys. You know what the definition of a lesbian is, right? Right? So the main character is a lesbian, but there isn't a lot of lesbians in there. Sir, with all due respect, just because it didn't give you the fetishized lesbian content that you were looking for doesn't mean it's not a lesbian story. The space part is also just in the most general sense that the story starts on one planet and then moves to another. That is fair, but also definitionally still takes place in space for part of it, and the second book gets even more of that. The actual action is all concentrated indoors and without a space flight between the locations. It is easily could have been set up in a fantasy world with, say, portals. I don't agree with that. I do think the sci-fi element of this is necessary for the story for reasons I don't really want to get into. But I do understand if you were expecting space, that could be a disappointment to you. I hate when people include like a big chunk of what the plot is. Like, I can read the synopsis if I want to read the synopsis. I understand the book can have a lot of fans, especially among younger audiences, but it is not my piece of cake. I am a bit too old to be awed by coolness of wearing shades indoor like the protagonist does. I like to have a plot and not the series of SFX, both in movies and in books. I can get that. This is definitely very young. And I mean that not in a negative way. I think when I read Gideon, one of the things I said about it was this is the most Gen X or Gen Z book I'd ever read. Like, it's incorporating internet culture in a way I haven't seen any other book, especially a sci-fi fantasy, do. And that's not going to appeal to everyone. So I do understand that. I just disagree with the premise of what he said. How do I get like... Okay. It's done. This is not terribly written, but I really, really did not like it. All right, fair enough. I have enjoyed reading textbooks more. My least favorite book of the year. That's so interesting to me because the thing with textbooks is they're boring. They're boring. No matter how interested you are in the subject matter, textbooks make it boring. And the one thing you cannot say for Gideon is that it's boring. So I'm really confused, and I wish he'd given us a little more information there. All right, I want to get to a lot of different books here, so I'm going to stop Gideon the Ninth there. Let's move on to Black Sun. Goodbye. Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. So I will give you, while I look this up, a fair warning that with a lot of books, when I love them, I look up negative reviews when I finish them. But I do that on Storygraph, so I'm expecting to just get different things with Goodreads, but also these are books that like I finished a while ago, so it's been a while since I finished them. All right, 1-star reviews. This one has a 4.23, also highly rated, and only 206 1-star reviews. I'm sorry, I just started reading this one. I'm gonna read the first paragraph of this because it's a DNF and I don't want to include DNFs because I think I don't have a problem rating DNFs. I understand why one would rate DNFs. There's a hair stuck in this book. I just think giving something a 1-star when you haven't finished it, unfair. Especially DNF at page 57, sir. This is like, what, how many pages is this book? 450 pages. You DNF this a fifth of the way through. Not a fifth of the way through. Sorry, 50 times 4, or 50 times 2 would, 2 times 4 is 8, 9, a ninth of the way through. You DNF this a ninth of the way. But the first paragraph here is just, this book is going to get a lot of great reviews based solely on it being inclusive. There are characters introduced who are gay and or bi, and the book is written using plural pronouns for characters who aren't defined. That's not an issue for me in the slightest, but it's not a reason to push on through the terrible writing either. I hate anytime somebody assumes something is getting good ratings just because it's queer. And I hate it uses plural pronouns. Sir, just say they, them. Get over yourself. Ugh. All right, let me find one that's not a DNF. Prime example of aimless meandering drivel. Opens with a semi-interesting bang, then quickly dissolves into a mess of robotic recitation of pointless musings by one-dimensional, emotionless, and largely unintelligent characters. It's been a while since I've read this. Look. So I can't defend this as well as I could maybe Gideon. That's been a more recent read. But the characters were not the deepest, but they were far from one-dimensional. And they were very clever. Some of them were very clever. Now I do get that, like, if the opening sells a different book, and I think that's fair. If you read the first part and you're like, wow, I can't wait to read more of this exciting, the rest is a little meandering, comparatively. But one-dimensional, emotionless, and largely unintelligent? Oh, gosh. Oh, boy. I'm afraid to even look at what reviews for the deep might be. I don't think it's gonna, I'm gonna hate this. I'm gonna hate everything. Nope. We're The Deep by River Solomon. 3.79 average rating. It's getting a little lower now. A pace so slow it took me everything to not fall asleep, and yet still there was insta-love. This is slow. It's intentionally slow. Like, it is meant to be a very slow build. You're getting everything through, what is their name? Yetsu's. You're getting everything through Yetsu's perspective, which is a little slower and careful and plotting, and that's intentional. It's not meant to be a big, thrilling action, fast-paced book. But insta-love? Ma'am. They spent like a long time together, slowly getting to know each other, relying on each other. I liked the concept, I really did, but the story dragged. None of the characters stood out, and I hated the ending and the message it tries to teach us. I am, maybe let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they got a different message out of this. Maybe they misunderstood the message. Maybe they got a different message. But I'm a little concerned if you don't agree with the messages of this book. A little bit concerned. A lot of these are just people being like, I thought this was going to be more felt more like a children's book than what it's supposed to be, and felt a bit half-a. First off, how dare you assume the intent of the author? How dare you make that assumption? But how does this feel like a children's book to you? What are you reading your children? The idea was promising. That's basically what a lot of them say. I like the idea, but then didn't like the execution. And I do think there is something in the synopsis that makes you think you're gonna get a different book than what you actually get in the book. So I do think that's a fair feeling to have after finishing this one. What do we go with? All right, let's do 2 more. We're gonna do maybe 3. We'll just do the first book in Tamsyn. So what's the first one? I always forget. Black Tides of Heaven? Black Tides of Heaven. 3.74, also a little on the lower side. Lower comparatively. This is still a high rating. I do think when you get into niche books like this, the people that are reading it are more people that want to be reading it, so the likelihood of it having a low rating is a little bit lower because the people that are finding it are people that want to read it. This book has a novella pacing, yet is 236 pages, which was simultaneously too long for me and too short for the story it was trying to tell. 236 pages for me is still a novella. Novella is like less than 250, less than 300. I don't know definitionally what it actually is, but I've always seen this classified as a novella. I understand that the pace is weird. This does a lot of time jumps. You're kind of just seeing snapshots of, gosh, it's been so long since I've read these books. Makoya and Aleka. So you're only seeing like snapshots of Makoya and Aleka's lives. So the pacing is kind of weird, right? It covers 35 years, jumping from set piece to plot point to dramatic moment, but without filling in why the reader should care about the politics or even what the politics are, and fleshing out the characters. All these dramatic things happen to. It all rings hollow. I disagree that the characters aren't fleshed out. I think every episode we get with them tells you so much about them. The pacing, though, isn't going to work for everybody. It really is like, here's a minute with this at this moment in time, here's a second in this moment in time, and you just kind of quickly go through everything. There we go. That's the angle I've been trying to get all day. So you just kind of see things for just a second, and then you move on, which is definitely not going to work for everybody. But I don't think it needed to be a full-length novel to get all those details in. I don't think we needed to see everything. Not everything is going to be the farseer, let's live the minutia of this person's life. And I think there's other ways it could have been told. You could have started with them as adults and done flashbacks. I don't think you would have gotten to know the characters as well that way. Much has been made of the detail that the people in this world choose their own gender. This fell flat for me too because it seemed only to feed into more gender essentialist garbage. I have seen this criticism. And all I can say is it gets better in sequels. I'm not really sure I can like comment on it beyond that. Yeah, the last part of this is kind of a spoiler, so I'm just gonna stop there. The details they give are about the characters like fulfilling stereotypes of genders, and I think 1, they're wrong, and 2, that's okay. Like sometimes it's okay for girls to like girly things and boys to like masculine things. I'm sorry. Wow, I have very low expectations for sci-fi fantasy. Fully expecting the average novel to be so cartoonish and badly written that even YA readers would feel like their intelligence was being insulted. But Black Tides is really something else. Why are you reading sci-fi fantasy if you just assume it's gonna be bad? Like, why? Why would you even read, why would you pick up a YA fantasy if you think sci-fi and fantasy is always going to be bad? What? But also he's wrong, but that's beside the point. But like, what? Plus I'd like to somehow give this book 0 stars insofar as the publisher refers to it on the back cover as silk punk. Why? Silk punk is a genre. I do think there is some issues with the use of the term, but it is a genre that's gaining wider popularity. Ken Liu's Dandelion Dynasty is referred to as silk punk. What else have I seen called silk punk? I'm not sure off the top of my head. Those are the 2 that come to mind. But like, it is a subgenre of fantasy, similar to like steampunk. You wouldn't be like, can't believe this publisher called this Victorian era story silk punk, like, or steampunk. Like you wouldn't say that. So why is it a problem calling this one silk punk? Questions. All right, last one I'm gonna do. I'm not sure I'm gonna like what I see for the Lost Daughter Collective. To be taught if fortunate, let's go with the Night Circus. Let's go with the classic. Let's go with a classic that I'm probably gonna agree with the negative things people say about it, because I love it, but I don't expect everyone to. The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Got a 4.03. These are all very highly rated. I should try to find ones that aren't. People don't like it in general. This drives me up a wall when I see like reviews like this. I never expected to like this book. Just from the title, I knew it wasn't for me. So don't read it. Like, I am far from guiltless in this situation. I do read books that I don't think I'm gonna like sometimes. But like, why start your review out that way? I didn't even think I was gonna like it. Like, then why read it? But so many people spoke highly of the book, so I read some reviews, and my opinion remained the same. Wait, did you even read it? This wasn't for me. Nothing about it appealed to me, and so I had no interest in ever reading it, but it was chosen for my book club. Okay, so you read it for a book club, and so I read it, technically. And now I'm going to rant about why I wish I hadn't in detail, which means there's going to be spoilery stuff, probably. Oh, I didn't click the more. Oh, that's so long. Nope, we're just going to stop there. That's too long. This one's tagged as how did this get published, but it's so long. Oh, here we go. I don't know if it is just me, but I have absolutely no idea what was happening in this book. I was constantly confused, and I still don't know what the game was about. And that was kind of the main premise of the book, so... The game was to see who could train a better wizard, or magician. Like, these two guys are clearly have been competing through the ages to see whose methods are better, and they don't want to fight directly, so they train apprentices to fight in their stead. That's all it is. It wasn't that deep, bud. Also, it was slow, really slow. I was bored out of my mind. Where was the plot? Barely. Was there plot? Barely. I agree. It's not the most plot-driven book, and that's not gonna work for everyone. The thing with Night Circus that I think puts it in kind of this unique category is it's not plot-driven, but it's also not character-driven. You are reading for the atmosphere, and you just kind of have to know that going in. When you read Erin Morgenstern, you're reading for the atmosphere. The plot and the characters are just there for the ride. And the year kept jumping around, and it told me to start at the start of each chapter, but I couldn't keep track. That's fair. For me, that's not a problem. I don't mind if I get lost when there's time stuff happening. But if you don't like that, if you want a chronological story, this isn't going to be that. It's just not. I couldn't keep track. How on earth was I supposed to remember what was happening in what year to whom when it changed every chapter? It was just so hard to follow. I was not a fan of this book, and I do not understand the hype at all. Now I disagree with that. Like, I think their complaints are very valid. I think it makes sense for them to have these complaints. I mean, like, yes, obviously, if you are confused by the story or you're confused by the time and you can't keep track of it, you're not going to like the story. That doesn't mean the story is bad. It doesn't mean it doesn't deserve hype. Here we go. All right. Last quarter, this book was better than the rest, but overall, I found myself disinterested in the story and characters. The author gives grand descriptions of the environment, and nothing ever seems to happen. I already talked about this. That's basically, that's the gist. Let's do the 5th season. That's going to be the last one I do. That's not on this shelf. I'm going to do the 5th season. I'm adding one more. 4.32. Wow. I didn't realize I liked such likable books. All right. This book was a huge disappointment for me, especially after reading so many glowing reviews. The story is supposed to be building up to a grand plot twist, which is finally revealed on the last page, but the plot twist itself is obvious from very early in the novel. Yeah, no? You might be able to pick up hints to figure out what the plot twist is, if they're referring to the plot twist, I assume they're referring to. But, like, while the novel is leading to that, there's a lot more going on. And while that's a cool twist, it's definitely not the point of the novel. So sure, if you were reading for that plot twist, you might be disappointed, but, like, why are you reading for that plot twist? The way the ending is written, it feels like the author is asking us to marvel at our ingenuity with this great surprise. Again, I don't think so. However, it wasn't a surprise at all since the clues were everywhere. Yeah, that's good writing. If your plot twist can't be predicted by anyone, and if you get to a plot twist and you're not like, oh, that was obvious, I should have gotten it, or, oh, I can see how they set that up, it's a bad plot twist. So, this This book let me down on so many levels. Unrelatable characters, fair enough. Slow, repetitious plot. Slow, repetitious plot. Clunky writing style, disagree. Inconsistent pacing, maybe, but what story isn't inconsistent? That's good writing. If it's the same pace all the way through, that gets boring. Like, you can't just be at the edge of your seat the entire book, and you can't be bored the entire time. You want the pacing to change. Poorly developed magic system? Absolutely not, sir. Then again, I don't remember what's developed in the first book, so maybe it gets better later on. But narrow world building. He says narrow world building. First off, how is world building narrow? I'm not sure what he means by that phrase, but I assume it would be the same thing if we said like shallow character development, like there's not a lot there, which is absolutely wrong. I know this is an unpopular opinion, but this book is just not for me. Listen, this book is just not for me. There is no doubt that this author has tremendous writing and world-building skill. Nonetheless, her choice to write the novel in second person combined with the language that breaks the fourth wall constantly made the reading endeavor really frustrating to me. You didn't stop to think that maybe those two things were connected? Just an idea. That the story is being told to you. Therefore, the narrator could break the fourth wall because it's somebody telling a story, and that maybe could be intentional. I mean, I get that it's frustrating for you. That I'm not trying to bash that being frustrating for you. But it's intentional. I cannot immerse myself in the story because of those choices. See, to me, that made it more immersive. It's like, I was there because you're telling me. You're telling me. Me? I did that? Not some nebulous, I did that? I think it works better actually in the Night Circus where it's like these little excerpts of it, personally. But I also think N.K. Jemisin in this was doing something different. I feel like I was being constantly poked at and pushed out of the narrative as the result of those choices. Okay, move on. Also, I don't mind some grimdark. I actually quite enjoy it normally, but this is just dark. I find it extremely difficult to read about violence being done to small children, and this book commits that violence over and over again. Those are not images I want to fill my imagination with. Fair. I mean, that's just, this book has some disturbing content. That's not going to be for everyone. And it's a very prevalent story. I guess very minor spoilers. Skip ahead like a minute if you don't want to hear anything. But this season starts with our main character coming upon the body of her son brutally murdered by her husband. And that's obviously going to be very present in the character's mind because, like, it's what drives her through the rest of the story. Obviously. But I get where that would be uncomfortable for a lot of people to read, why people wouldn't want to read that. So, like, I think it's a necessary part of the story. So I think how do I put this? I think there's two different kinds of disliking a story. There were things like, I did not enjoy this, but I think it was well done. And there is, I think this was poorly done. This definitely falls in the, I think this was well done, but I didn't like it. And that's fair. I really would be concerned if some people didn't find the things that happened in this book disturbing. It's a real pity considering this book's acclaim and selfishly the fact that I have signed and personalized copy that I could treasure, so that I will have to pass it on to somebody more receptive with style and themes. This is a very reasonable review. And I'm going to go ahead and end it there so that I'm nice and calm when I go to my meeting this afternoon. Overall, like what you like, dislike what you dislike, but sometimes you can be wrong. I'm really mad I didn't get to any of the ones that are just like, the reviews that make me the most mad are the ones that like they just miss the point. Anyway, that's it for me. If you would be interested in me doing the opposite of this, now I don't tend to get as invested in 5-star reviews of books I hate, but sometimes, or more books. So again, these are in theory my favorites. You can also go on my story graph and check anything I've given like a 4 or above. If there's any books you would also like to see me react to some reviews from, let me know. If you have opinions, positive or negative, about any of the books I mentioned in this video, feel free to let me know before, and maybe the follow-up to this will be me getting angry at you. Probably not though. Anyway, love y'all. Have a great day. Bye.